Hello, and welcome to what was intended to be the next episode in my series of looks at my campaign setting. Camera shake, blah. But, turns out the AI race is going to require a little more scripting than I thought it would be requiring. And, I recorded the video, and it had a lot less actual content that I presented because I rambled a lot and stuff, and it amounted to being a little longer. So I've got to refine the video a bit. I'm not gonna present a lesser quality, less substantial video than my follow shoot video for the race, and it be longer. That would be wrong. Anyway, instead, here's with a reasonably anticipated review, or rather follow-up review. Yes, all 4 or 5 of you really were looking forward to this review. It's a follow-up to my previous Dungeons & Dragons 4th edition review, and I accidentally closed my script, so hang on a second. Recording live, ladies and gentlemen. Let's find that script again. Where is it? Anyway, a lot of my opinions of 4th edition are the same as they were before, although my view of the system isn't quite as favorable overall, and I have to retract or amend a few points, and that's the point of this script, as I'm going to basically go off a series of bullet points after rewatching my review and itemizing a series of things I need to fix, like I just said. Now I'm going to get comfortable. And by get comfortable, I mean I'm going to sit on both of my legs in an office chair. Because we need to get all settled in for this time, because it's going to be a longer video than my previous review. So yeah. What do I think of the system now? Let's just hop right into this by me reading directly off a script and sounding all slightly more placid than usual. Addressing some things from my previous review, like I've said. They did not, in fact, add specialist wizards back pretty much at all, much less en masse. Where's my transmuter wizards, huh? Wizards? Where they at, man? As I said in my previous semi-joke video about the Sha'ir, or however you pronounce that if you want to be exotic with it. We've got illusionist powers, sure. We've got enchantment powers. We've got necromancy powers. We've got the mage that has class bonuses based on schools of magic. We have some specialist wizards. But we're missing a large number of the formerly best schools in the game, and in fact, by Wizards of the Coast standards, the mage effectively isn't canon anymore. But Essentials being effectively killed by Wizards of the Coast is a matter of speculation, debate, and I don't fully agree with it myself. But anyway, I'm rambling, because I tend to do that. Anyway, we've got specialist wizards back to an extent in the form of the mage, but we're missing a large number of the formerly best schools in the game. I can't recall a dedicated conjuration class. Although there's conjuration magic, I don't recall there being a conjurer school, although I'm probably remembering wrong. Seems like something that would be there if we had conjuration spells. But we don't even have that many transmutation spells. You can't be a transmuter in 4th edition at all, really. They even invented a new school of magic called Nethermancy. And yes, I do know shadow magic existed in 3.5, but I refuse to acknowledge the existence of the Tome of Magic. Aside from a cursory quip, one of the classes in that book didn't even function. Wizards even teased the transmutation school's return in excerpts from Heroes of the Feywild, but you know what? Aside from the at-will, they were all daily powers, and amounted to being awfully similar to already existing content. They dropped the ball. They dropped the ball hard. How hard? so hard it fell through the planet, exploded sailing into the sky over the airspace of China, violating treaties all out the yin-yang, destroying a few satellites, colliding with the moon and throwing off tides for the next 10 years, and then causing craters about half a dozen planets on the pathway out of the galaxy. That is how hard they dropped the ball. And I'm only exaggerating a little bit. Anyway, next list before Hyper-Bowl becomes a sporting event. What does that even mean? Anyway, lack of utility spells. I incorrectly stated you can't fly as long. It's a moot point, not relevant to this review, really. But you might be wondering what I mean, you can't fly as long, when like, oh, all the powers that say you fly for any prolonged period of time is only till the end of the encounter. Well, encounter is pretty much defined at the core of the rules as an obstacle for the party to overcome. That includes traveling long distances. Of course, this is DM Fiat, or DM's rules arbitration, but technically you could use that power to fly over large distances. Of course, there's still the lack of utility spells. They thrust most of the utility spells into rituals. What do I think of the progress of rituals and similar things? It was slow as hell, but finally, at the end of all the system, we have a decent array of utility options for rituals, and feat support for them. There's actually darn good feat support. But where's my support for martial practices? Why'd you drop the ball so hard on alchemy, man? Alchemy being a similar to rituals thing that was actually a pretty interesting element added in Adventurer's Vault, but for some reason didn't get a single additional recipe in Adventurer's Vault 2, and didn't see a single additional recipe until Mordenkainen's Magnificent Emporium. And most of those were either repeats, slightly modified versions of existing recipes, or piddly things that didn't matter. Although there were one or two nice things. But despite all this, did Wizards make a mistake with rituals? To an extent. It shouldn't have been the primary source of utility magic. There's no debate about that. But I do enjoy it as the system used for item creation, time-consuming magic, and raising the dead. That stuff that logically takes a large amount of time should be lumped into rituals. Plus, there's technically a lot you can do with the concept of ritual magic itself. The idea itself was good, but the execution... Oh, look, I dropped a ball. Didn't quite go to the planet this time, but still dropped the ball. There's a dent in my floor. Fuck. Anyway, next point. There's more I could say about ritual magic, but I'm going to be going into that when I talk about my earlier points on magic items. You might ask, do I have more complaints about 4th edition now? Because at this point I said I like a lot more than I hate about it. Well, yeah, I do have more complaints. Do I still like more than I hate? Yeah. But, yeah, let's move on. I'll go into that in more detail basically later. I do stand corrected, though. In the grand scheme of things, powers don't actually encourage the average player to roleplay in battle any more than plain old 3.5 attacks. Basically amounts to, oh, I use this power. I use this power. Oh, he used that. I used that. Anyway, mind you, powers do set up situations where players want to describe their text more often, but it does often limit the flavorful RP of improvisation. That isn't to say there's no improv. Hell, I've used grappling hooks to pull giant coffee tables over onto giant celestial pugs before. Long story. I've ended entire encounters before they began using Mage Hand. However, tons of players don't feel as motivated to improvise, because if you've got powers, why do you need to? Or they don't feel like they don't think that there's actually rules for it when there is. But that's a fault in the system they could not have foreseen, and you can't really begrudge Wizards of the Coast for that. Mind you, you can begrudge them for a lot of things, but that is not one of them. That's just something nobody could have predicted. Anyway, next point that I must amend or something. Address. Do I still think 4th edition still has issues with variety? That's a complicated issue. In fact, it both simultaneously has too much and too little variety. The too much coming in 3.5 edition style, and the too little also coming in 3.5 edition style. It's amazing, actually, how the two systems are similar and things that are wrong with them. But congratulations, good job, Wizards. You've managed to create a paradox system again. But it's even more prevalent in 4th edition. I'll admit there's a lot of classes that feel samey in 4th edition. But at the same time, I ask you to tell me the major differences in the methods of similar classes in 3.5. In 3.5, all fighting classes hit the enemy with weapons in pretty much the same ways. All arcane casters stayed back and casted spells, often with similar loadouts. The only real class mechanic variety came with the divine casters, as the cleric and druid, while similar, operated pretty differently. Sometimes. Variety in 3.5 came from how you played and built the character and who that character was as a person, same as in 4e. There's no less variety class to class than previous editions. The fact that things are similar just stands out more. You may say, oh, every leader has a nearly identical healing feature. I counter that point with every class in 3.5 that could heal had the Cure Wounds spell chain on their list. If anything, 4e healers are more varied in their healing tools than previous editions. Oh, every defender has marking ability, and does damage as a mark. Well, no, not every defender actually has a mark. And defenders in 3.5, they existed, meat shields existed, didn't have a mechanic to enable them to do it. And how did the meat shield do it? Walk up to the enemy, whack 'em, attack me. The exact same way. Again, if anything, there is more variety in the tools at the disposal for the role you're filling in the group. So yeah, there is the variety problem is not the lack of variety problem is not on a class-to-class basis. While classes do similar things in similar ways, the problem with variety in 4e stems from the system being built around characters that have a set array of ability scores and overly condensed skills. You can't be outright bad at anything, and your skill set can be too broad sweeping. A good example I've heard once were, what if I want a character that's good at pickpocketing, but has never seen a trap in their life? You can't do that, as the rules are written, and because thievery encompasses both picking pockets and disabling traps. You have to house rule this kind of thing. Or talk to your DM, oh, my character has never seen a trap in their life. And the DM's like, okay, maybe you've got a slight bonus to picking pockets, but you can't disable traps. But you can very quickly make checks at a slight penalty, despite not having the skill, and over time you can pick it up, where you can actually apply your full skill. And stuff like that. That's the main problem with the variety in the system. Class to class, if anything, there's too much class variety. There's over 20 classes in the game. We've been bogged down by different classes that do weird stuff in similar ways, just like in 3.5's later portions of the thing. I can't even name off the top of my head all the classes in either edition. It's just the lack of variety. The similarities between classes in 4th edition sticks out more than it did in 3.5 because they have that veneer of, oh look, you're picking powers, so you expect more differences. But anyway, next point. We could consume the entire video talking about the variety issues. But we're going to amend the next point in my previous review. Magic items. I still enjoy magic items, how they're done in 4th edition, and I still enjoy them how they're done in 3.5. I missed the custom magic items from 3.5, actually. But in a way, having magic items with set abilities makes them a little more special. You're not just finding the flaming sword of Vorpalness, you're finding a sword of shrinking that, like, shrinks something. Or there's no sword that does that. Or you're finding the Helm of Heroes, which boosts your leadership abilities. You know, you're not finding the Helm of Radiant Brilliance, where you take the thing off and you get... okay, bad example. But, you know what I mean. You're not... being able to have your magic items made to order. To exacting specifications. Like, oh, I want flaming... I want Vorpal, I want it to banish outsiders, and I want it to be bane of pixies, and to disrupt undead. That's a little weird, but I can see arguments for both sides there. It's not to say that 4E doesn't boil down to made-to-order magic items as well. In fact, I think item creation is more overpowered than in previous editions in 3.5. In 3.5, few people bothered with item creation feats. Unless they were like, oh, I want to make a golem. In 4th edition, there are less feats needed. That feat does more stuff. There are no drawbacks, aside from consuming a feat, and the money for the rituals, and the fact that the magic items cost more to make, but don't cost experience. And magic items are imbalanced as hell when magic items lists become catalogs. The item system creation falls completely apart in 4th edition without house ruling. But again, in 3.5, nobody even bothered with it, really. They had to house rule it to make it actually an option. You know, unless you wanted to take a whole through this series of complicated thingamajiggins in character to arrange things like consuming the souls of the innocent and tapping into liquid pain through the sacrifice of entire kingdoms so you could make it an army of clone robots that you animate. Oh, wait. Never mind. Tangent. Never mind. That's the Dark Emperor. No. Anyway, moving on. That's really the itemized list of things to address from my previous video, because my previous video was even more rambling than this. And that's factoring in the times I deliberately rambled as part of a joke, or to illustrate a point, and the times I accidentally rambled, like right now, due to bad improvisation. But we're running a long time, so... in general, yeah, 4th edition has a lot of problems. It's still a good system. I still enjoy the combat more, because it's more tactical, you're doing more variety of things, and if you get over that mentality that you can't improvise when you actually can, you're not losing anything from the 3.5 combat system. In fact, you're gaining a lot more. I still play 3.5. 3.5, well, actually, no, I don't actually play 3.5, I play Pathfinder instead. Because while Pathfinder doesn't fix, well, most of the issues with balance, it does make a few attempts, and you don't have to filter through so much crap and supplements to get the stuff that's in balancing out of the way. It's a fresher system. You can just ignore a couple of books and the game is fairly balanced. But anywho, let's not go into balance of 3.5 and stuff like that. I could go into another 20-minute long video about the subtleties of balance and everything. But 4th edition, I'll back up a point I made really quick in my previous video. 4th edition is different. And does that make it bad? No. Do I wish there was more variety? Does it have variety issues, both too much and too little? Yes. It has all of the problems I've mentioned in this video, but is it still a good system that's fun to play? Yes. Can you roleplay just as much? Yes. It's Dungeons and Dragons. Just get over yourself, man. If you hate 4th edition, you're not doing it right. That's all I can really say. Of course, I'm making too much broad sweeping emotion. You're perfectly fine to disregard a system if you don't like it. Go to Pathfinder or 3.5 if you want to stay with it. That's your business. But 4th edition, while flawed, isn't bad. It just needs work. I'm looking forward to 5th. Maybe it'll, fix the problems. I'll admit, 4th edition went a little too far towards balancing things out, and too far towards streamlining, and then they backpedaled and basically fell all over their faces when they came out with Essentials. That's in an entirely another video. In fact, if you want me to review Essentials and talk more in depth about the lifespan of 4th edition, and more about things that they did wrong in the development process, feel free to tell me. But right now, we've gone too far in the length of the video.